Have you ever heard the story of the Lonesome Stain? You haven't? Well, let me tell it to you then. The Lonesome Stain was a dishwasher in Southern California named Justin, and he worked very hard every day for very little pay. But he was happy enough with his little apartment and the bicycle he rode back and forth to work. But there was one thing he really wanted more than anything else. A motorcycle. Not just any motorcycle, mind you. He wanted the coolest bike that money could buy. A bike that could take him anywhere he wanted to go, on dirt trails, on the street, and down any road he could dream of exploring. So he saved every penny he could. And after a long time, he had enough money to buy it. The sun sparkled off the chrome and the glittering blue paint as he tore off the lot. He rode out the afternoon, and when the tank was empty, he went to fill up that brand new bike. He pulled up next to the pump and pushed the little magic gas button that automatically flipped open the brand new gas cap, and he filled her up. That's how new his motorcycle was. It had the new, cutting-edge flip-top gas cap. When he was done, he pulled out onto the street feeling very proud and overwhelmingly happy on this great day. People were jealous of him, and they were watching him ride down the street on that glorious bike. But he wasn't paying attention to the road, and the car in front of him slammed on its brakes. Justin couldn't keep his new motorcycle upright. He pulled and stomped on his brakes, turned the handlebars and the tires, swoosh, just slipped right out from underneath them. In that second, everything changed. He was skidding down the asphalt, and what do you think happened next? You're right. The magic gas button got pushed, and the sparks from the metal gas tank on the ground ignited the gasoline. The last thing that Justin saw were his fingers melting away as he tried to cover up the gas tank hole. When Justin woke up, he woke up as the Lonesome Stain. He was alive, but not because he wanted to be. It was terrible. He looked like he'd been cooked on a skillet to a golden crispy brown. His face was just a mass of brown shiny folds, and the rest of his body looked like fried chicken. But along with all his pain and suffering, he also woke up very, very, very rich. So rich that even though he was so ugly and disfigured, people would still have sex with him. So it turns out that the pop-open gas cap wasn't a very good idea. And the way they found this out was the Lonesome Stain's accident. So in the settlement, they just gave him so much money that it almost made everything okay. Almost. Except something no one realized was that the Lonesome Stain still had the mind of a dishwasher. And it is often very silly to just give a person with a dishwasher's mind that much money. He thought he would put his mind to good use and better himself. First, he thought he wanted to be a sculptor. So he bought thousands of dollars worth of hammers and chisels and marble, and he stood there in his big art studio in front of those big blocks, and he couldn't think of anything to sculpt. Then he decided he should be a musician. So he built himself a music studio with all the newest stuff, and he yodeled away in that studio with his burned-out voice box, and people would come in and say how wonderful he sounded. But he really didn't sound that wonderful.
Can we borrow your hi-hat?
So next, he decided he wanted to make movies. People told him they'd help him write the movies and film the movies, and they'd be in the movies, but no one ever came to see his movies. Eventually, the Lonesome Stain finally did see that all these people were just using him for his money, and they really didn't care about him at all. He decided that he needed to try to find a way to sort out who his true friends really were. And suddenly, it occurred to him. He would have a party and invite all of these so-called friends. It would be the party of all parties, a party that would make even Martha Stewart jealous. It would have every delicacy you could think of, except for one thing, caviar. At least, no caviar for the guests. The caviar would be just for him. He would leave it in the refrigerator with a big note on the door that said, "Please do not eat this caviar. It belongs to the Lonesome Stain." And then, you know what he would do? He would put poison in the caviar. And anyone that did not respect his wishes would get deathly ill or even die. But either way, they would learn. A little harsh, yes, even a bit crazy, but it had to be, because this was the ultimate test. So he threw the party and bought Marlon Brando's old estate in the Hollywood Hills just for that night. And in the end, everything went as he had planned. The night was filled with eating and drinking and dancing and laughing, and the guests were having the most wonderful time as the Lonesome Stain watched them all. And he waited. And every so often, a beautiful young girl or some strapping young man would wander into the kitchen and snoop around until they found the caviar. And instantly they would drop to the floor with a thump, and the Lonesome Stain would drag them down into the basement. By the end of that night, 9 young ladies and 4 young men were killed by that crispy dishwasher. And on that night, the Lonesome Stain's insides turned as twisted and disfigured as his outsides. His heart became as leathery as his face. And as he was carried away by the police, the remaining guests, all stunned and horrified, heard him call out,
You are my true friends. Eat and drink and enjoy yourselves. Because this was all for you. This was all for you.
And the moral of this story is, you really never know. If someone has messed with your food,